Hey guys. Alright, so I whipped up these little extensions here. This is that swaged, and I was talking about this thing here, how it steps up. That was actually in that kit, or some part of a kit that I had from left over from some other project. But these are 3-inch on this end and then swaged on this end. And I think I said about 7.5 inches is what I needed, but what I got was 2 at 5 inches. So this will work because we have so much slip to work with. So let's get set up and I'll show you how these are going to work. Alright, so the idea here is to slide that guy on there because this guy is not swaged, and then oops, stay together so it slip fits like that. And so now I've got a real healthy bridge between here and here that'll support that, and all I have to do is just basically just stitch weld it. Really, it's not, I'll Foley weld it, but all you really need to do is stitch weld it. So let's get the other side on. I'll remove this guy for now. Yeah, if I install these hangers where the stock ones go, I would have been up a creek, or basically done all that work for nothing, because they got to come off and be lowered down quite a bit. So just another reason why you should fit your stuff before you start drilling holes. Now, remove this guy. This one might be a little, this one was a closer bend, so I wasn't sure if I would be able to get this to fit in here. This there. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to go forward with this. Like that. Now I have the freedom to rotate these popovers where I need them, and I'll mark the clocking on both of these so I know where they need to stay once I figure out how high and which way is up. But that is the whole premise there. Looks to be like an exhaust. Looks pretty good. So now the question is where to put these hangers. These guys here. I think I'm going to start by removing the passenger side exhaust hanger first, and then get that down and connected to the other side over there, and then we'll be able to determine exactly where those go on the back seat, not firewall, but the back seat sheet metal. So let me get set up for that, and we'll start removing that. So I'm back on the charger here. It's just the next day. Some things have changed since I last had my last thought on the exhaust. So I was fitting those brackets on, or the brackets that TTI supplied with their kit, as much as I like them, they're just not going to work. Even with this extra bracket here to, you know, like I've been saying, the car was a single exhaust car to begin with, so it didn't have another bracket on the driver's side. It only had the one on the passenger side. So they supply that, which is great. But from fitting up this whole exhaust, this depth here, or this length, just doesn't seem like enough. And I would have to move these brackets down substantially, which would actually interfere with the seatbelt bolt plate, which I'll show you here in a second. But you'll see what I mean. So those guys would end up being right about here, or basically right over the top of this seatbelt, and this is basically the bolt that holds the rear seatbelt in place on the driver's side. So back to plan A, which is what I was messing around with these guys originally when I was going to build my own exhaust, and these guys just so happen to work. As you can see, I've got them kind of mocked into place here and bent almost perfectly, and so the exhaust is at ride height right now, and so I'm just going to zap those guys in place, just tack them here, and I think everything looks pretty good. Actually, it's not nothing's jumping out at me. You can see the other one here is in its spot where it's going to go here. So just weld that on the back there, just a couple quick tacks just to get those guys set in place. One thing I did want to mention, while I'm under here, I smell fuel every so often, or fuel vapors rather. Nothing leaking. However, this is my fuel vent here. Not exactly sure where this is supposed to be routed. Maybe some of you guys can tell me in the comments where this should be routed by factory standards. I just kind of had it here, but it's real important that I plug this before I tack weld these guys for obvious reasons. So, and let's see here, what else? I can also, let me get reset up here in a sec. Hold on. All right, so here I'm up at the front of the car here. I'm trying to locate a place for the oxygen sensor for my wideband air-fuel ratio. And, you know, I was thinking, gosh, this would be a good place, but I'm only sniffing that one primary from whichever cylinder it comes from, so that's not going to be any good. If I'm down here closer to the collector, I believe that gives me a better better idea of what everybody's on this side bank is doing. I only have one sensor on this particular set, so I am actually going to go right here. It's about, I would say, at the 10 o'clock position, maybe 10:30. So, and I have plenty of wire sensor here, plus the little dongle that comes on the O2 sensor. I did realize that I bought the wrong O2 sensor. I got an 8-pin. This is a 6-pin. As you can see, it's round, and the ones I typically buy are the 8-pin, which has a square plug. So that's got to go back. But make sure you know how many pins your O2 sensor or your wideband uses. That's important, because these little guys are, you know, they're $100. They're not cheap. So I'm obviously gonna have to do this on a table, which is no big deal, but I've already kind of pre-fit it here, and I've confirmed with the actual sensor that this will work. Can't drill it in this position, obviously, but I think I'm good with that. And as you can see, the exhaust, look how fast this rusts. I mean, I live in California. This is not a super humid area by any means, unless it's raining, which is not very much. But yeah, look at all that rust. It's just surface rust. I'll get it all off before I shoot this stuff, but I do have to tack those hangers today, and once I have those guys done, I can basically paint this exhaust and put it back on the car. But I also have to remove the headers, because I'm going to coat those as well with this Thermotech stuff that I'm going to show you guys, which actually works really, really well. And it's a spray can formula. It's not the hoity-toity ceramic coating that everybody swears by, which is more power to you. If you want to do that, that's great. But this Thermotech stuff is actually really good too. So I have it on the orange truck, and it's still good to this day. It's been 6 years. So so yeah, you can see the exhaust is actually all looking pretty good. Everything except for those hangers is going to be used. So you saw me extend these mufflers because they're obviously shorter than the ones that the kit is designed for. Not a big deal. But yeah, I'm happy with it. Happy with the way it looks. It's not under the axle. I've seen so many guys run their tubes under the axle, which I don't like at all. Seems silly to me, but to each his own. But yeah, let me get the old buzz box over here and tack this stuff up so I can start breaking it off. All right, so I've got my battery completely disconnected, like both positive and negatives, everything disconnected from the battery, the main feeds, and even the small side terminal stuff. And as an extra precaution, MSD actually says if you're going to weld on the chassis that their 6AL digital boxes are on, it's best just to disconnect the thing altogether. Just basically pull the main plug off the side of the box. So I do that also. You know, if they're loose in the truck or car or whatever, I always Velcro that stuff in anyway, so it's pretty easy just to unplug it and just leave it in the car. Just don't want to fry anything unnecessary, that's all. So don't forget to do that stuff. You will regret it if you fry something, I promise you. So just kind of welder 101 there. So now here's your tech tip. Gas vent, just use an old, I keep all my little plugs and caps and stuff for situations like this. And this is just a little cap off of a gear oil quart, I guess, or pint or whatever. Just a little cone thing. There's no hole in it. But yeah, I'm just plugging that. And it's not the gasoline that's going to ignite. It's the fumes that ignite. And the fumes, by you know, all intents and purposes, they travel on the ground. So if you were to pour gasoline out here, the fumes actually will travel on the ground and they will migrate, and you can't see which way they're migrating. It has to do with, you know, wind blowing and all that stuff, but just try to prevent any and all possibility of blowing yourself up for obvious reasons. So what I'm looking at is the level of these mufflers. So I've got my little torpedo level here, and I am going to level these things in case somebody looks under here at some point, and it's just who I am as a person. But I'm trying to think through. Okay, so I made these stubs here with the swedge on them. I didn't make them, I cut them out of a few pipes that I had left over from a previous kit. So I'm thinking forward here, and building a car is all about thinking forward and planning ahead as far into the future as you can see, and a lot of it comes from experience. But I'm thinking of, okay, I got to pull this system apart. Once I get these hangers tapped here, I got to get these things taken off the car and then actually put back on. So I was thinking of how I'm going to pull these apart once I have these hangers on the muffler. And the muffler and the hangers are going to become one, obviously. But how am I going to get this apart if I was to weld this and weld this? So what I'm going to do is cut slices. Once I get this all knocked apart, once I get the hanger on there, I'm going to tack these guys here in a few different spots to hold them. And the way I'm thinking is I'm just going to treat this extension just as part of the muffler. Now that may take away some ability to get it apart. However, I do believe with these end pieces here being individual and they have their own brackets, I can remove that and pull this guy back there and get it away from those, because it's a tight fit, and with those hangers in place there's really nowhere for this to go but twist this way, and I want to have it oriented correctly, and that is going to be determined in the final fit up. So I want to make sure, you know, in the final fit up I want to make sure these pipes are in the right index vertically, so they don't rub or tap on anything. So you can see how much I can move it there. So that'll be determined when I do final assembly with everything painted. But I do think the right move is trying to determine whether I should, because there's a lot of movability in this sleeve right here. I probably got it overlapped like this much, and it's less inside here. So I gotta think about this for a second. I may end up tacking it to this tube. Just thinking through what that's gonna get me. Or all right, let me think about this for a second. But anyway, you guys get my point. You want to think forward through all this stuff before you start welding stuff, because it's a pain once you get it all welded up, or at least tacked, to cut it back off, put it back on the car, and do all that. So you really want to think through everything, and think through the disassembly, and then think through the reassembly. I know I'm going into way too much detail about this, but that's just who we are here, and we like to do things the right way. And even doing things the right way, you still have to do them twice sometimes. So just passing along what I know, or what I've used or been bit by in the past. So let me get set up here and think this through one last time, and I'll be right back with you. All right, so I found another problem here. Just looking over my work before I start zapping things together, I came across this little guy here, this is the tailpipe going out the back. See my rag there for the protection. Runs very square to the tank, but you can see right here, no matter how I pivot this pipe, whether I pivot this way or that way, it basically stays on the tank itself. So this is 3-inch exhaust problem. So if you did a 2.5-inch kit, you probably wouldn't have this issue. It would probably center a little bit better, but this is the kind of stuff that you want to think about and look over before you start zapping things in place. So what I'm going to do is, I've obviously made my mark here on the tank flange there. I'm not going to cut it, don't worry. I'm gonna basically fold where I wrote fold there in gibberish. I'm going to fold that section up or down, whichever one seems, probably up. And then I'm also going to clearance the tube itself. I've marked my, I guess, center line of the pipe there, so when it's on the bench I can actually make heads or tails of where it needs to be. So that's kind of my other mark there. So dent and fold. So yeah, that's the stuff you gotta look for. And obviously you can't weld or cut this tank. Don't do it, trust me, it's not worth it. I'd rather buy a whole new tank than try something stupid like that, so don't do that. However, this side is a little bit cleaner. See, I've got, well, looks like about a 1/4 inch there. Come on, the screen's not working with me. Okay, yeah, so I've got about a 1/4 inch on this side. So technically, if I look at my strap placement on the tank, so this is the first rib, second rib, and we look at, we'll just say I've got a finger on that finger's worth of width on the inside of before the second rib, and then on the second one on the passenger side I've got less than a finger. So theoretically this tank could get shifted over, and I may actually do that also. So that's an option, but it's still, because the engine moves and the chassis will twist slightly, it's just the reality of things. I'm still going to make these clearances and corrections just because it's just the right thing to do. In this case, I don't want to hear my exhaust pipe hitting my tank, and it's also not a great idea to be hot and touching the gas tank as well. So again, 3-inch problems, it is what it is. That's what I chose. I'm going to live with it now. So anyway, just want to bring that to you guys' attention. Got to look out for that kind of stuff. All right, here I am back at it I did want to mention that you can weld through this coating on the Flowmaster mufflers. I've done it, but I took the liberty of removing the coating just for longevity's sake. Anything you weld, you just don't want it contaminated. Some applications it's really not that big of a deal, especially when we're stacking up different levels here. If I was to butt weld this, it would obviously be a much bigger deal, but honestly it's probably not going to matter. I'm going to coat this whole exhaust with the coating anyway, so it'll all be protected. So now what I'm going to do first is weld these sleeves so the muffler and the sleeve become one, and then it really doesn't matter how level the mufflers are until I start zapping these hangers in, which I'm going to do second. But first I thought I'd get these sleeves set in place here. So let me get set up, grab my helmet, and we'll get going. I'm going to plug that gas vent too.